President, I appreciate my colleague, the friend, Senator from Connecticut, for yielding for a question. And I'm proud to join so many members of the Senate. I want to echo what my friend, the Senator from Missouri, comments on one of her constituents. We're getting those same kind of calls, notes, questions. I want to acknowledge as well that there have been members of the House from Virginia and Louisiana who've come to show solidarity of the effort that's being led so ably by both senators from Connecticut and the senator from New Jersey. I think we all are trying to wrap our heads, Mr. President, around how did it happen that a single lone gunman was able to extinguish the lives of 49 Americans at a gay nightclub in Orlando. When we get to this legislation, I think we also have to acknowledge that this was a crime of hate. A crime of hate that disproportionately targeted Latino community, in particular the LGBT community. And as the LGBT community grieves nationwide, we need to make clear that the long fight for equality includes not only marriage equality, but equal protection in terms of public safety and living in safe communities. Senator from Connecticut just made some of the comments about the number of deaths that take place in our country each year from gun violence. 30,000 a year. I think, just as Senator from Connecticut acknowledged in the aftermath of Newtown, how I rethought some of my positions on some of these issues, we all have to take a fresh look at the challenges our country faces in providing a reasonable framework of gun legislation that protects the rights as well of law-abiding gun owners. One of the things that troubles me is that I think virtually every member of this body has probably stated or tweeted out their thoughts and prayers for the victims in Orlando. What I think I'm hearing in the media from those victims and from Virginians across the board is they want to see more than thoughts and prayers. They actually want to see us act. There are a whole host of different proposals that we could look at to try to deal with gun violence. I believe the senator from Connecticut, though, has picked two that are frankly the most reasonable, the most common ground that we should take on. Because like the senator from Connecticut, I know what scourge of having a mass murder take place in your state. Until this terrible, terrible tragedy in Orlando, the deadliest mass shooting prior to last week was Virginia Tech in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where 32 lives were taken. I know how that community grieved, how Newtown grieved, how Aurora grieved, how Charleston grieved, and how now Orlando is grieving. And quite honestly, day in and day out, how many other communities are affected by this scourge of gun violence. As a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, I know the challenges we face every day in dealing with the threat of violent terrorists determined to do our nation harm. But if we're going to talk about taking on terrorism, which we need to have a united effort on, shouldn't we take this reasonable step of abiding by the judgment of law enforcement and say, if you end up on a terrorist watch list, you should not be able to purchase a firearm? And we've seen in recent days statistics that show that more than 90% of known or suspected terrorists who attempted to buy weapons since 2004 have passed a background check and then have been able to purchase a firearm. To me, that is an internal contradiction that by taking action this week, we can change around. If you're too dangerous to get on an airplane, aren't you too dangerous as well from being able to purchase a firearm? The second solution that my friend, the senator from Connecticut, has put forward, take up and pass the bipartisan proposal that has overwhelming support of the general public, to increased background checks. 90% of the public supports this effort. Over 70% of gun owners support this effort. And why? Because we know that background checks work. Since 1994, 2.6 million people who had either evidence of criminal backgrounds, mental illnesses, have been prevented from purchasing firearms. So, Mr. President, there are a host of other proposals I know the senator from Connecticut has put on his agenda, but what I want to do is thank the senator from Connecticut for putting forward two of the most basic proposals, two of the proposals that have the broadest bipartisan appeal. And I would ask the senator from Connecticut, with the overwhelming public support that Americans express for this kind of common sense legislation, and with, unfortunately, the sometimes low regard this body has held, does the senator from Connecticut believe that if we took up these actions and passed them, not only could we send a strong signal of making America safer, but we could once again show that we are fulfilling our constitutional duty?
I thank the senator for the question, and I really do think that that's at the essence of this debate. It's why we're on the floor today. It's why we're lodging this protest, is that, if you look at why the approval ratings of Congress are so low, it is in part because there are these enormous challenges that are confronting the nation that we're ignoring. People are upset that we're bickering and fighting all the time, but they are also deeply upset that there are these epidemics, that there are these public safety crises, and we're doing nothing. And so, I think that our ability to respond to this in a bipartisan way, to reflect the support of 90% of the American public, is about saving lives, but it's also about, as you said, fulfilling our constitutional responsibility. Why did you sign up for this job? Why did you decide to be a United States senator if you were going to ignore this epidemic of slaughter in this nation? There's nobody that disagrees with the fact that this is a major problem. It's on the headlines of every paper, almost every day, a weekly basis. Why do you want to be a United States senator if you want to ignore this one? So I thank the senator for his remarks and for his question. And